Hello, everyone. On behalf of AAEE Board Member and Director of Professional Development, Alicia Scott, it's my pleasure to welcome you to another webinar hosted by the American Association for Employment and Education. Thank you for joining us for today's topic, Test Preparation and Testing for Future K-12 Educators. My name is Tim Newbert, and I serve as AAEE's Executive Director. Please allow me to cover just a few housekeeping matters before we begin. This webinar is being recorded and will be made available to AAEE members as well as non-members who registered. Attendees who are encouraged to post any questions, comments, or feedback using the Q&A or chat features within Zoom. If you or your organization are not a current member of AAEE, please visit our website, AAEE.org, for more information about our activities and our resources. We are a professional association intent on positively impacting education through professional connections. Related to that mission, we connect the three critical groups involved with the preparation, recruitment, and retention of pre-K-12 educators: university professionals and others who prepare and support educators, school system professionals and others who recruit, hire, and retain them, and of course, educator candidates themselves. We offer annual publications such as the Job Search Handbook for Educators. We conduct an annual educator supply and demand survey each fall and winter, resulting in a spring report. We co-host the careersforeducators.com job board with Kappa Delta Pi. We host webinars such as this one on topics relevant to our membership. With support from Proximity Learning and Bench K-12, respectively, we sponsor scholarships for future teachers and mini grants for school systems and nonprofits to encourage and support educator pipelines. We co-host an annual national working group on teacher retention with Upbeat, and we host an annual conference and education career expo each fall. Our 2023 event will be held on October 23rd to 26th in Chicago, Illinois. Check out our website to learn more. Thank you again for joining us for today's panel presentation and conversation about testing and test preparation for K-12 educators with experts on the topic. We're pleased to be joined today by Dr. Jason Ample, founder of the Learning Liaisons, Tim Bieser, head of social impact partnerships at study.com, Steve Schatz, CEO of Educational Testing Consultants. Thank you all for being here today. Let us begin. So Jason, why don't you start by telling us about yourself and your company and how it supports test preparation and or testing for future K-12 educators.
Well, hello, folks out there watching live and watching the recording. I feel like I'm back in high school because my last name starts with A, so I guess I go up first. I always sat in the front of the room. I did not like that. So a little bit about myself. I'm not going to give you the full boring story, but I grew up in New York. I moved down to Florida. I live in Orlando, Florida. That's where I operate out of. Back in 2000 to work on my graduate degree at the University of Central Florida, go Knights. I continued on to get my doctorate in curriculum instruction, also at the University of Central Florida. And for me, I was a teacher. So I taught for 10 years in public schools here in Florida. I did 5 years middle school, 5 years high school. Very interesting time. I had the mindset of becoming a principal one day. But that quickly changed when I went to do some of the leadership courses. After I got my doctorate, I had the luxury of the ability to have a lot of senior interns when I was still teaching. So here in Florida, I can't speak for around the country, but in Florida, when you get a senior intern, when you're a teacher, they give you 3 college credits. So I started banking those up. I'm like, oh, let me go back and do my leadership. And after I did all the courses, the last one, I was a room full of half the people were admins already. And all they did was complain. So I nixed that real quick. And while I was teaching at the university, I saw a need of the students in my graduate and undergraduate courses struggling with the Florida teacher certification exam. So that's kind of where the Learning Liaisons was born. I started building this around 2014, 2015. I'm a big proponent whenever I do trainings around the country or I do presentations at conferences or webinars, or I get to talk to HR directors and meetings and deans and all that kind of stuff. I always find it important to let people know, especially the person that's out there trying to help you retain your teachers and provide that early career support, is that I'm coming from somewhere where I've been in those shoes. I've been through the certification process. I've taken the exams. I've supervised interns. I've been on the flip side of the whole process. And for me, it's kind of like helping people because I struggled in the past. I was a horrible test taker. So I started slowly building this in like 2014, 2015, really picked up speed in 2017, 18. The tremendous growth, been doubling in size and revenue every year for the past 4 years. And in 2021, I was approached by a online certification company known as Teachers of Tomorrow, and they inquired for me to acquire my business from me. So after 6 months of discussion, I went on board with Teachers of Tomorrow. So now I'm able to have my own curriculum department to build content, build questions, make those partnership with test prep companies, and really help and move 100 miles an hour to help teachers across the country. Now, one of the big struggles when it comes to certification tests, I'm sure we'll talk about this, so I'm not going to keep blabbing because, you know, I love talking about teacher recruitment and retention. But one of the big struggles is, you know, teachers and college students are just lacking support. You know, we all know the stats with teachers leaving the classroom in the first 5 years. One of the biggest proponents of that or issues behind that is support, whether it's PD support, good administrators just feeling like they belong. Well, test preparation falls into that because I work with hundreds of school districts and universities, and it's all the same. We had a big meeting today with one of the largest school districts in Nevada, and the same struggles that they have are the same struggles that small universities and small districts have. So it's all about providing that knowledge, that skill, and that attitude that teachers and college students around the country deserve when it comes to teacher preparation, because we are a profession, and one of the marks of a profession is a code of ethics, and continuing education and a certification process. So it all can be done. I know I make it sound easy in my courses, but we've got extremely high success rates. So we'll talk about, you know, what it takes to help teachers and why I believe it's important to provide proper support. But, you know, like I said, I could keep talking. So I'm going to yield to the other speakers.
Thank you, Dr. A. All right, I'm now going to turn the same question to Tim Bieser. Please tell us about yourself and your company and how it supports test preparation and or testing for future K-12 educators.
Great, thanks, Tim, and I'm very happy to be here today. So my name is Tim Bieser. I'm the head of social impact partnerships at study.com. I'm based in Northern California. I'm a first-generation college student, so I have a lot of passion around education and what it can do to really, you know, uplift people and provide opportunities. So I'm lucky that with my seat on the social impact team that I really get to work on the core mission of study.com, which is making education accessible. And that's something that we take very seriously and kind of our guiding light, especially on the social impact team in our efforts. So a little bit about study.com. So we've been around since 2002. Very broad-based education platform. So we get about 30 to 35 million unique visitors per month. We have courses that affect both or allow people to achieve their goals both from a professional and a K-12 perspective. So we serve K-12 learners and teachers. We have 230 or so courses on our site that are recommended for college credit and widely transferable. We have a full tutoring suite that we're just rolling out in the last few months. And then we have a very large library of test preparation resources. So we have over 1,500 test prep resources across the site serving 60 different categories. And why we're so successful with our test prep is because of the way we deliver our content. So we use a video-based micro-learning content strategy. So we take difficult, complex subjects like, you know, Biology 101, for example. We chop it up into 150 6 to 10-minute video lessons. Each lesson has a short competency quiz that you utilize. You kind of rinse and repeat your way through the course. And then for test prep courses, we have a comprehensive diagnostic tool on the front end, and then practice tests that actually allow individuals, you know, like most providers, to kind of go through and cycle to see improvement over time. So we support test prep and teacher certification test prep and have been since 2013. We have a very large library that covers most of the suites across the country. And one of the ways we've supported it most recently is an initiative called Keys of the Classroom. So in 2021, we saw really the decimation of a lot of teacher pipelines across the country with COVID and lower EPP graduation rates. And really said that, you know, we have this sought after resource that can help more individuals pass these tests, which is a main barrier, especially for diverse members of the aspiring educator workforce. And we wanted to work directly with practitioners across the country to help alleviate or lower that barrier of testing. So we launched our first program with Clark County School District in Nevada in the end of 2021, where they have a very large paraprofessional program where many individuals hadn't taken algebra in 20 years, for example, because they haven't been to college in that long, and started donating licenses and to the benefit of these particular programs in order to help more individuals in those cohorts pass. Since then, the program's really grown. We're now operating in 20 states across 25 partners. We have a very diverse mix from school districts to large national nonprofits like TNTP or Teach.org, and working with some of the larger districts and even state departments of education across the country. And you know, most proudly, when we look back at the kind of the work that we've done through this initiative is that we're starting to see great results through the program. So in our particular program, in our last data set that we pulled, 92% of the individuals that utilize study.com passed their test successfully when they engaged with at least 75% of one of our prep courses. So really trying to put the resources in the hands of those people that are doing the good work and the hard work of developing the next generation of teachers.
Thank you, Tim. Appreciate it. All right, Steve, last but certainly not least, please tell us about yourself and your company and how it supports test preparation and our testing for future K-12 educators.
My name is Steve Schatz. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Educational Testing Consultants. We've been working since 2000. Did some test prep even before that, but our company was established then. We focus on admissions testing. That's where our foundation lies. Testing for graduate students who are preparing for the GRE, GMAT, or LSAT. We work with pre-college students who are working for preparing for the SAT or ACT. And then in the past few years, we've recently moved toward working with some of the Praxis core. We tend to work with students who are still in their course of study at the universities. Our courses aren't really delivered to individual students. Rather, we support universities, continuing ed divisions, colleges of education, and other folks to build their own testing and test preparation programs. So we've been, Jason's from Florida, our company's from Florida as well. I'm here in North Carolina. In the state of North Carolina, they have requirements for certain Praxis scores to even declare your major. So we tend to reach teachers, I think, a little bit earlier in the pipeline as they're preparing their course of study rather than as they're applying for their jobs. I look forward to hearing more about what the other panelists have to say about some of the trends that happen for folks on the employment level. But you mentioned some sites that are familiar. Jason, we work with UCF. I love to see that you've kind of incorporated their colors into the logo. I see Golden Knight, true to the core, and excited to hear more from everybody who's here.
Great, thanks, Steve. All right, I'm going to throw the next question up on the screen here. So our next question is, what trends are you seeing in test preparation and/or testing, and how is your company responding to those trends? Are you seeing my screen? I'm sorry.
I see it.
So I have to go first
Okay.
again. Can we reverse?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm happy to reverse. I guess that makes me back on the spot. Two draft picks in a row. That's okay. So one of the trends that we're seeing in test preparation lately is sort of a change in attitude. Of course, as I mentioned, we work with admissions. So some of the changes in the way that the states are using undergraduate and graduate admissions tests are sort of changing some of the demand for the programs that we're using. But one of the things that I've noticed as we start to look into test preparation for teacher certification is, I don't know if other folks experience this, there seems to be no shortage of folks who are in need of test preparation. And yet, lots of folks are sort of reticent to participate in programs. So I'd like to hear more about what folks are doing to engage with the students who are most in need. There's sort of those who are most in need of the test preparation programs are least likely to have access to them. And so that's part of the reason we connect more directly with the universities, but other ways that folks are facing the trend that folks are in need of it, but find it hard to access. That's one of the things that we're trying to overcome.
Great, thanks, Steve. So we're definitely seeing a change in attitude as well. I think we have a bit of a different framing on it in terms of how we're seeing it. So where we're really seeing a lot of change is that there seems to be a growing acknowledgement and recognition of just the disparities between pass rates of different race ethnicities as it pertains to a lot of these tests. And I think with that acknowledgement, people are trying to provide additional supports across different systems to ensure that more individuals are able to pass these tests. And I think we're pretty familiar with the data, but it is pretty alarming. 50% of aspiring educators fail their first test. There's a 30% delta between the pass rates of a African-American aspiring educator and their white counterparts. So just really alarming data, especially if you're looking at the educator workforce from a representation and diversity perspective. That's why we really chose to work with partners through Keys to the Classroom and our other work that really have a focus on this. So we work with Mississippi First, for example, in Mississippi, that is really working with individuals that have either are first generation or have economic barriers to getting testing resources and are providing those directly through the public school systems in Mississippi. We're also working directly with the New Teachers Project, or TNTP, and they have 5 fellowships across the country that are working in primarily very urban school districts where they're struggling to recruit and to retain teachers and trying to lower those particular barriers. And to speak to your point, Steve, about engagement and how do you get to people, how do you get the horse to drink the water once you get in there? One interesting program that we see is out of Prince George's County, Maryland, Prince George's County Public Schools. So they lose about 2,000 teachers every year to the expiration of their temporary credentials. And as you might imagine, that's a huge drain on their educator workforce. So what they've actually done is we're working with them to actually take at least 600 of those 2,000 or potential 2,000. And they basically do a front-end review of what exactly are their testing requirements. And then they pair them with mentors that actually help work with them through the testing process. So it's very much, it's not 1-to-1 exactly, but it's probably 1 to 5, 1 to 10. And they've dedicated a tremendous amount of resources to making sure that not only are you providing these additional supports, but are you ensuring that the supports are being utilized in a way that's actually going to produce the outcome that you're looking for. So we are, I think, thankfully seeing more and more programs that are kind of going with that mentoring route or actually embedding it into coursework, that kind of thing. And that's really, I think, how you're going to start to see enhanced engagement, because it's very easy to throw a tool at somebody or a resource or a website or even offer a class, but getting them to actually engage for the long run of that particular studying cycle is more the name of the game.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, kind of what you talked about, Tim, with the demographics and the diversity aspect. I'll be honest, it's going to sound weird, but I got to go in the opposite direction of that. I know it exists. I know the disparities between certain students of different backgrounds. But my feeling and kind of what I gear when I'm growing this, because we're one of the bigger states that we were able to get into over the last 12 months. And we went from 0 districts to about 25 in the last 6 to 10 months in South Carolina, for example. And we're in a lot of school districts that predominantly African-American students, and they've had tremendous success with our programs. Now, I'm not saying that it doesn't exist. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is it's all about how you provide that support to these teachers. One of the big things that I talk about in the courses and on all the trainings is that, studying for these certification exams, yes, it's a part of the profession. It's a part of the sequence that everybody has to do. Check that box. I get it. But the process about which preparing and studying has to drastically change from the traditional, I'm going to cram for 2 or 3 days before a final exam in college, or I'm going to study the night before for a high school exam. The ultimate, now there's a lot of keys to success on these exams, but for me personally, and what one of the tenets that I used to build the company Learning Liaisons is, it's about changing that mindset, one, about the exam, educating them, the makeup of the exam. A lot of these teachers and college students, I've learned because I've talked to them, I've been in trainings with hundreds of teachers, and most of these people that fail, these students and classroom teachers that fail these exams, the vast majority of them who paid their money, go in there and get frustrated because they failed, have no idea what they're walking into. They don't know the content. They didn't study the blueprints. They didn't look at the competencies. They don't even know what they need to get to pass. That's a huge majority. Like if I'm going through and doing a workshop on a constructive response or an essay on an exam, like for example, I do prep for Florida, Texas, Praxis, and now I'm developing courses now, hopefully be done in the summer for Michigan. And I'll be standing in front of a big room of teachers talking about, in Florida, they have a test called the general knowledge test, and part of the subtest is an essay. So I'll have people that'll say, oh, I failed this 4 times. I know this is taking my money. And I'll say, look at them straight in the face. And I said, listen, I'm not picking on you, but can you tell me the 5 things that the state of Florida grades you on? And they'll look at me and just go, I don't know, grammar. So, everyone gets a chuckle. Some people get a little upset, but the reality is, one, we got to teach these people what they're walking into, these students. They have to understand and be confident. All right, I get this dry erase sheet. I know what types of questions. I know the content. I know what score I have to guess. I have some strategies, right? So they have to know about the exam, and they have to understand how ETS or Pearson, for example, how they construct these questions. Like, for example, for 10 years, I taught at UCF. One of the courses I taught was learning assessment, right? Learning theory and assessment. Obviously, part of that curriculum was to talk about how to create all different types of questions. Now, we don't teach that anymore because, school districts spend millions of dollars on programs and textbooks that do that. But part of, prepping is, 1, learn about the exam, 2, understand how they write these questions, 3, have proven strategies, then go into practice and content review, right? For me, my philosophy is the biggest part of success on these exams is not doing 100 and 200, 300 practice questions and taking notes on everything. Yes, that's important, but the biggest part is strategy, knowing what they're walking into. Then work on that and self-assess and build that confidence. So for me, I'm seeing a lot of success across the board because, I'm very familiar. There's a lot of good resources out there. Study.com, I'm familiar with. It's a good resource as well. But certain things work better for certain people. But at the end of the day, teachers need 3 things. And this is my mantra for all the courses: is knowledge, know about the test, skill, test taking strategy, and most important, confidence. Having that attitude to know they got what they need, they know what they're walking into, and then they go in there. That's why our pass rates are so high. To also address this trend, something that we're seeing a lot, and my sales executive, Phillip, Tim, you met him, you know him. He does most of the district meetings at university. Sometimes I pop in, help out when I can. But we all know that recruitment and retention is a major issue. It has been. Like, I go to these conferences like, this isn't new. But obviously, gasoline's been thrown on the fire since COVID, and it just exacerbates the issue. What we're seeing, and I'm sure, Tim, you're seeing this too, and everybody else on the panel as well, Steve, is that a lot of these, I'm not talking about universities, school district, we're seeing a very big increase in the number of alternative certification teachers that are coming in the field. I'm talking 70, 80%. One of my biggest clients is Broward County Schools, and they are pushing 80% of their new hires. So what does that mean? That can mean a lot of different things. Maybe people aren't going to the College of Education. Maybe they want to pay $20,000 and they want to do an online program for $5,000. Maybe they want to come to the school district and get a free PCPP program or pay $1,000 to go through that part. Maybe that's part of it. Maybe people are just fed up with their careers and they want to become teachers. So that's definitely a big battle for a lot of even the larger district or a smaller school district. But one of the things that some of the school districts that I'm doing, and I think, Tim, you mentioned something about incentives. I think you mentioned it, is, for people finishing the prep. Yeah, we see that too. We have school districts that repeat customers for the last 4 or 5 years, and they keep coming back. They might get access for X amount of teachers or college students, and not everybody uses it. So, I have certain mechanisms and, on automations and stuff, but ultimately it's the relationship between us and the school district. But some school districts that they don't know this, right? I mention it, and our sales executive, Phillip, mentions it, is a lot of these school districts don't realize that they can use certain funds and certain grants to incentivize teachers. So for example, some of the school districts that I work in, that I offer courses to, maybe I do workshops for, if they come in and do my courses, do our courses, or come to my workshop, complete all the videos, right, which, tracks everything and gives them a cool little certificate. When they submit it, the school district pays for their exam. They give them a voucher. So they have to provide that proof. Now, yes, I know not every school district has the money to do that, but there is funds that they can find to help incentivize people to get through. Yeah, it's the $1 million question. You need to keep your job. You love what you do, right? Why are you not going to take the test? So, it's people being scared. It's people hearing, nonsense from their colleagues about it's impossible to pass, right? It's, I don't know how to prep. It's, I've been doing this so long, and I talk to so many HR directors and deans, and I always ask questions on purpose. When I get to know them for a little while, I feel more comfortable. I'm like, do you ever get people that come May or April, like, I don't know, I have to take a test? And I know the answer. They go, yeah, college students. Yeah. Well, we work at a lot of universities, and we're embedded in their program now, our test prep online and stuff. And it's like, they still, even though they email them, even though they call them, even though they have sessions and webinars and workshops, some people still just wait, and they don't even realize that they have to do this stuff. So, there's a lot of things that universities and school districts can do to incentivize, but everything comes back to my initial comment when I introduced myself. It's about support. Myself, study.com, etc. We can do our part to give you great resources to help you. But at the end of the day, I'm all for it. And so Phillip and TLL, our team, it's about building those relationships, and not just, hey, here's your code you bought, good luck. Maintaining that conversation, giving advice on how do we give these out to your students, your college students, your teachers? How could do we have to do a kickoff webinar? Do I do videos to welcome them? So everything for me, for TLL, everything is video based. I personally recruited teachers of the year from the school districts around me in Central Florida, and I film them. Everything is on camera, lesson plan, lesson reviews, quizzes, practice tests, everything. They have access to their teachers in a private group. And why did I do that, right? Because I want teachers to basically have their own kind of personal tutor, even though they're not like meeting times online, but they make that connection with that person. And it all comes back down to support. Is there someone in their corner that's willing to spend time to help them, and not just give them a bunch of practice questions, but give them the tools that they need to be successful? So a lot of trends, just the recap is the increasing amount of alternative certification. And then it just all comes down to giving them that support that they need to be successful, regardless of where they are in the country.
Thank you all. Any other thoughts before I move to the next question?
No, I would totally agree with the supports in terms of having somebody that's going to help guide you, but also be there to provide additional material if needed. So one of the things about study.com that I think it really differentiates us from other kind of testing services is that because we're a comprehensive curriculum offering, you're not just getting 500 questions on that particular test. You actually have the ability to learn the underlying material, go back, take that algebra course, learn polynomials, learn linear equations more in-depthly than just getting like 500 questions served up in some random order. So I think that extra layer, especially paired with human supports and mentoring across, really provides kind of a difference maker, when comparatively speaking to kind of more standard or traditional test prep strategies.
All right, very good. If I can figure out how to advance my slide. There we go. So here's a potentially sensitive topic, but you guys have seen this question in advance, or this comment to respond to. Some have suggested significant modifications need to be made to current tests for future K-12 educators. Can you please share your thoughts on this issue? And Steve, we're going to start with you, if that's all right.
Well, we could, but I was also willing to let Tim have an opportunity to go first for one
Oh,
of the
sure,
times.
Tim. No, that makes sense. Yeah.
Whichever courtesy suggests is the right way to go. I'm happy to.
I'll let you guys fight it out. Tim, you're welcome.
I'm happy to jump in. So I mean, really this particular question really, I think, kind of speaks to the broader issues of certification across the country, not necessarily what modifications do the specific tests need to make in order to remain relevant. And I think that really what it comes down to fundamentally is preparation, and being an effective educator does not necessarily equate with passing the test. There is not a lot of great data out there that shows that passing praxis core makes you more effective in the classroom or provides better outcomes for your students. Needless to say, I think testing is still an important, gate, I guess, if you will, for the educator workforce in terms of maintaining, levels of understanding and subject matter expertise, et cetera. So I think it's really a matter of kind of how does testing become less of a barrier to getting more people into the educator workforce is, I think, really how I think about this question and how I would answer it. I also think I'll echo one of Dr. Arpel's comment, was that the non-traditional and alternative credentialing space is going to be the way that teachers get into the classroom even more so as we go into the future. Because I mean, you just look at EPP enrollments across the country, and the facts kind of speak for themselves. More people are looking for that way to become a career changer or a paraprofessional that's already working in the district, and how do they get into the classroom. So I think more credentialing and thoughts about testing needs to be kind of thought about in that prism of what is the next generation of teachers going to look like, and how do we effectively monitor them and ensure that they're ready to be in the classroom. And that goes all over the place in terms of what different states are doing. For example, Florida is allowing military veterans to work in the classroom while they're dual enrolled essentially in their college program. California basically has said that college credit will satisfy their core or their CBEST program. So there's a lot of different thoughts in terms of how tests need to be utilized to ensure educator effectiveness. And I do think that the modifications will be around how to ensure that next or alternative flow of teachers or pipeline can also reach the classroom as the traditional EPP student. I think that's really how we think about it at study.com and kind of through our work.
Yeah, and to add on to something Tim said about the increasing number of alternative education or different routes to become a teacher. When I left UCF in 2019, because it was just too much to handle, the business and teaching, and I miss it. I love teaching university level and school, but there were over 12,000 students in the undergrad program in the College of Education at UCF when I left. 12,000. That's just the College of Education. So there's over 60,000 people in that university, students. I just looked because I had a conversation with it. I forgot what I was talking about. But I'm like, let me go check. And I just looked last week and it's 5,900. So that's now that's still a massive number, but that's a huge drop. And it goes back to what I said before, when it comes to economics and money, what's the bigger value? We all know that there's education, College of Education cutting or some of them closing down. I had the opportunity to do a presentation at ACT Day back in Indianapolis. We're already in April, Jesus, 2 months ago. And I was sitting in the airport in Atlanta connecting, and there's two ladies behind me talking about the conference. Like, oh, you going? She go, yeah, I'm a professor in Iowa, right? I forgot what university. And I was talking what I was doing when I was talking about. She's like, yeah, the legislature just passed something where the students don't have to take the certification exams anymore, right? The core. So there are states like Arizona where not all teaching jobs, but you can get in the classroom with a high school degree. So because we need people in the classroom. Now, the conversation goes to, is that a good thing, right? What's ultimately going to happen over time? Listen, I've been through the process. I taught middle school and high school. I taught university level. Listen, the conversation, even when I was back in my graduate and doctoral program, I'm sure you guys, I knew anyone here listening was education background, maybe 15, 20, 25 years ago. We always used to have these conversations. I used to write papers about the profession of education, right? That's still a conversation. So what makes it a profession? So I think as a country, we need a certification process just like any other profession, lawyers, electricians, whatever, doctors. But there has to be a very fine line between what we let go of and what we purposely put our college students and teachers through to gain that certification. I completely agree with Tim. Literally, last night I was doing an online workshop for OCPS, as one of my longtime clients here in Florida. And literally at the beginning of all my trainings, I tell people, listen, I said, this is just a check. This is just a box you have to check off. It is not indicative. And it's just what you said, Tim. It's not indicative of how smart you are or how great of a teacher you are, right? But the argument comes is it enough? Like, we're losing so many teachers. For example, the GKT in Florida, they just made some recent changes to the law, the Praxis Core for all the 35 praxis states out there, right? Is there a line that you cannot cross where, listen, we can't, I spoke to some universities, I don't remember the state, right? Even if I did, I wouldn't say it, but they literally told me last month at another conference that, traditionally, and I can't speak for every university in every state, but traditionally, you might have your basic skills test like the core in the praxis or GKT in Florida. You have to pass that traditionally to get in the College of Education. Before you do your internship, you have to pass your subject area, your content area, like for praxis, and then your PLT or your Pro Ed in Florida or your PPR, whatever, to graduate at the university, right? But some of them I talk to in some states, you don't even have to pass your content area to intern. So you're putting students in front of a classroom, giving them full control, and they might have failed or not even taken a content area. So you're teaching a math class, but you haven't passed your content area. So that's a whole nother conversation by itself. Is it bad? You could argue either way, right? Is it good? You could argue either way because they want to get people through the program. Now they still have to pass it before they graduate. But there are some programs, like for me at UCF, don't ask me what the name of it was, but I remember they started having problems with their students not passing the exams in the College of Education to get into the program. So they created a parallel program. And I know a lot of states, other states do this, where they took away the testing, they took away the internship. I forgot what it's called, but they're able to graduate. Now, when they get their job, they still have to take the test, but they wanted them to get that money and to graduate the program and move on. So, for me, I like some of the changes, like, for example, some of the praxis exams over the last 6 months, they're adding more in these content areas like middle school math or middle school science. They're implementing pedagogy type of questions, right? In Florida, they did that. I'm surprised, but they did that a while ago, like the elementary exam. So the how to teach kind of thing. I think those types of questions on content exams are very important because, yeah, it's good to know math or it's good to know social studies or ELA or whatever. But as a teacher, you have to be able to give out the information and teach it. So does it make you a great teacher or tell everyone you're a great teacher because you did well? No, but I think it's important in that certification process. But, the last thing I want to add on is with these basic skill tests like the core or the GKT in Florida. I've been interviewed by newspapers over the year here in Florida, especially about the GKT, because, taking a math subtest, because there's 4 subtests on there, a math subtest that has math that creeps into 9th grade, and you're a PE teacher or an English teacher or something where you don't have to know that. It's one thing to know basic math, but algebra and geometry, that's where I could kind of see the argument. But doing grammar and having good reading and literacy skills and stuff like that, that's obviously important. So as an educator and someone been through the exams, I'm a proponent for the test, not just because I do it for a living, but it all goes back to what I've been saying. It's just a part of the process of becoming certified in any profession. So can there be some minor changes? Of course, right? But we shouldn't just open up the floodgates because there's a lot of people out there that I talk to, so we should even have them, right? Just put them in a program, put them in the classroom. If they're a good teacher, let them go. But there's, like I said, there's a fine line between what we should do, what we could be doing better, and maybe, changing some of the things. So that's a whole nother workshop by itself.
Well, that's sort of the perfect segue for me. Thanks, Dr. Ample, for giving me the opportunity to not look like I'm ducking the question. You're right. The question of what should be changed about the test is something that's a really different sort of panel webinar altogether. What we do, at least what we do here at ETC, is a little bit downstream from that. Our thoughts are more like what Tim mentioned when he first responded. Once the items are on the test, we want to help ensure that those things aren't a barrier for the folks who are seeking, their career. One of the great things about working in test preparation is there is a sense in which helping students pass the exams that they need to or meet the qualifications that they need to gives them access to their dreams. And so remembering that that's sort of what we do helps me sort of think, golly, if there weren't tests at all, I'm not going to weigh in on what I think about that. But if there weren't, I'd find some other way to impact teachers or impact students and help them and so on. So I'm all for vibrant, robust discussions about what should and shouldn't be on the test. But my thought is, once it's there, what can we do to best help students prepare to be successful, to get the support they need? And as Tim said, let's make sure this isn't a barrier, and refer to what Jason said about let's just check the box. Let's help people move on to the more fun stuff, like what specialization do I want to focus on? What grade am I going to think about? What other things can I do to make the testing aspect of it really just one of the very small steps in the very long journey of an educator's career?
Excellent. Thank you all for your thoughts. I'm going to open it up to free form. Anybody, any other thoughts folks want to share today before we close this webinar?
Did you get any questions, Tim, from anybody? See, we got.
Haven't seen any questions come through. I will reiterate verbally. I put it in the chat a while ago, but I'll reiterate verbally that attendees, you are encouraged. You are welcome to submit any questions or comments for our panelists, and we'll certainly put the questions to them. But in the meantime, any other thoughts, gentlemen, that you want to share? You've got the platform recorded for posterity, shared out for posterity.
I'll just say it was a real pleasure to be here and discuss such an important topic. I mean, we really need to do more, I think, to bolster primarily public education, but all education, and especially get more teachers into the classroom and hopefully keep them there in any way possible. So, but thank you for having me today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's awesome to get to share, your thoughts and what we're doing to help. I mean, one thing I always tell, school districts, universities, there's a lot of places out there across the country that don't do anything to support. There are people the universities and districts, institutions that do a little things to try to help, and that the effort is good. And I've had an opportunity to talk with people that have robust and extensive programs. Like they'll hire people to come in, or they'll have professors or teachers come in and tutor, and they have all the system, or they have a website. But at the end of the day, right, you have to take and consider, is it helping? There's a lot of school districts out there, universities that have great pass rates. They support their teachers, and kudos to them to doing a good job. But, if you're representing a university or a school district that, you're trying and you're doing, and, you're not seeing the results that you can, like I've been saying, it comes down to the right support. Not, obviously, we all know that not everybody learns the same way, but, I can't reiterate enough. I always tell people, passing these exams is about the application of knowledge, not the memorization of knowledge. That's one of the quotes. I got a couple of quotes that I live by that I kind of said out loud and didn't realize it. And some of the people that work with me write it down and go, you need to make an image out of that. So, because that's the big thing that I see people do, is they just going out there and memorizing stuff and memorizing content, memorizing questions. But in reality, when they go take the test, when they sit there, they get mad because everything that they see on the screen, whether it's Praxis, Texas, MTTC, whatever it is, Florida, it's not going to look like what you've been studying, whether it's the learning liaisons, whether it's ETC, whether it's study.com, because we don't know exactly what's on the test, but we do know the competencies in the blueprint and the major skills that are going to be given on the exam that you are expected to know, or your students or your classroom teacher is expected to know. So it all comes down to how do we support, how do we help them in their early career, part of their early career as a classroom teacher, but on the university standpoint, how do we make sure they have the right proper support to get into your program and actually graduate and represent your university with high esteem as they go into the classroom and be the best teacher that they can be. So, you know, I appreciate Tim the time, and I've obviously encouraged people. I'm sure Tim's going to share our contact information at the end. If you ever want to talk, he'll give us our contact information. Feel free to reach out anytime. I'm happy to talk about or how we can help serve the needs of your institution, or just talk about this in general. So thank you, Tim, for inviting me, and I appreciate Tim too, and Stephen for being a part and being a part of the conversation. So thank you.
Very welcome. Thank you. And we do have a question from one of our attendees. I have a student who took the elementary education licensure test and struggled with middle school history content because it was geared toward middle childhood. The licensure is pre-K through 5, but they're not taught content. How do you recommend students prepare for that portion of their test?
Oh, I love that question. I get that all the time. Like, for example, in Florida, I'll just use a testing example. So in Florida, a couple of years ago, they made a change to the legislature. So I can't speak for every state, right? But in my state, they have what they call a reading endorsement, where teachers have to do 300 hours of coursework at their school district or local university to get that reading endorsement. But the state of Florida, a couple of years ago, changed it, and they could do that, but they also allow teachers to go ahead and take what they call the subject area exam, like a content area exam, for reading K through 12. And all elementary teachers were required, even if they've been teaching for 20 years, to go back, and they can do that to nix the whole 300 hours, right? They just change it. Next year, it's stopping in July 2024. I'm saying this to all build up with a reason to answer your question. At the end of the day, and people could disagree with me, when it comes to pedagogy and content area type of questions, unless it's about the social, emotional, or cognitive development of a child, that type of question, it doesn't matter if it's 3rd grade, 6th grade, 9th grade. Like, you know, a 10th grade US history teacher is doing a lesson on blah, blah, blah. What's the most effective way to make sure our students are learning the objectives? That type of question. People think, oh, 10th grade, or oh, 4th grade, or oh, 6th grade. No, we just dig down. As long as you know the major concept, when it talks about the type of teaching or the type of concept in that pedagogy type of question, as long as you know that at a 30, use the term 30,000 foot view, and you have the right strategies on what the test is looking for, that's some of the things that I focus on in our online courses, then it doesn't matter, right? I know people think I'm crazy, but most of those questions don't circulate around the development level of the child. So hope that answered your question, because I get that a lot with people, you know, like for example, the PPR in Texas, or the professional education in Florida, or the PLT segmented at different grade levels. But the other tests, it's all K through 12. So you got elementary teachers taking questions that might have scenarios about high school students, and vice versa. So at the end of the day, it's all about, you know, knowing that education concept at a 30,000 foot view, and then you could figure that answer out on any type of question. Hopefully that answered your question, Tracy. That's a good question. I get that a lot.
Yeah, I would just add, I mean, the way we break up our courseware on our particular site is that it's all grade-based and standards aligned, states aligned. So you can go and say, I need 6th, 7th, and 8th grade history, put that into a sort, get those 3 courses to pop up. And then if there truly is a content gap and it's not a strategy or a skills gap, as Dr. Appel said, then there are a ton of resources out there where you can actually just buck up on that particular content area and then feel more secure going in for your second time. So that would just be an additional thing to add there.
All right, I am going to share my screen again and share your contact information. And I want to thank all of you very much for your time today and for sharing your insights and your expertise on testing and test preparation for pre-K-12 educators. And I want to thank all of our attendees for attending. And you will be receiving notice of the availability of the recording as soon as it is available. Thank you so much, everybody.
Can I ask you a question, Tim? What do you think about this?
Oh, I have a lot of opinions, but no, I mean, I kind of, I mean, I do appreciate what everybody said, but I have to say that Steve, you know, what Steve said struck me that at the end of the day, these are the tests that are being presented as the hoop that you have to go over, or the, you know, whatever you want to call it. But so unfortunately, I mean, you guys can all have some influence, I think, in the roles that you have in this space. But you know, there are other powers that be that control what these tests are, and you know what the specific questions are. So ultimately, it's a matter of how can all of us, how can you and your services and all the rest of us, how can we work together to help people navigate through the process, you know, whatever it is. I would love to see, you know, I've, you know, there was earlier some conversation about, you know, disparate impact and just, you know, different, and some groups not feeling like the testing was appropriate. I'd like to see that, you know, more attention being paid to that in individual states and across the country. But and it sounds like maybe ETS is taking that on, for example. So, but again, I just really appreciate all of you. You know, it sounds like you're all doing this for the right reasons and really committed to just trying to help students and career changers and others navigate through this process so they can get to the other side and be a pre-K-12 educator in our schools, which is ultimately what we need.
Good answer.
Thank you. Well, thank you all very much, gentlemen. And again, attendees, appreciate all of you. And please join us for future webinars and other activities. Thank you all.
Thank you. Nice to meet you
Thanks
guys.
to everybody for joining us.
Bye-bye.